welcome back. This is show 3 of 2023. I'm welcoming you back. I think we're gonna do some more patterns. We did some patterns on the last show, and I enjoy doing them because at this time of year, end of January, it keeps me thinking. It keeps you thinking about the plants. It keeps you thinking about relationships. And like I said, it's easy to do because it's just a pad of paper, a pencil, and a list of plants that I'd like to see and create combinations with. So one plant we're going to carry over from the last show is going to be Parthenium integrifolium, the wild quinine. The other plants we're going to be using are Echinacea purpurea. I'm not really interested in putting any hybrids in or selections or whatever. I'm just going to use the straight species. And Nepeta subsessilis, Monarda bradburyiana, and Cacalia plantaginea. So I don't know. Some of these plants you might not be familiar with, and others you're saying, geez, Roy, I use that all day, or every other week. But I'm really looking forward to putting some combinations together with these. And I have the last picture image you'll see is a pattern that's already established. And I'm going to disassemble that pattern so you can see the image and recreate with the same plants a whole different pattern. And I think that's always good for me to do, to see how everything can be taken apart and redid in so many different. It's like disassembling a word and creating a whole new word from the letters in the alphabet. So it's a lot of fun to do. So let's start with our first pattern. As you saw before, I'm going to make this one 6 by 5. 1, 2, 3, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 6 by 5. And the plants I'm using are Cacalia. And you can see on the image, it's a taller plant with beautiful white flowers. It's a very coarse foliage plant also. And then we'll be using Parthenium and Monarda bradburyiana. Monarda bradburyiana is a short Monarda. It's more central United States, south central. But it's only about 24, maybe 30 inches tall, when it grows into itself tightly, but about 24 inches. Very tight and very good in average to drier soils. And has beautifully dark green tinted burgundy foliage. It's a very beautiful foliage plant and flowering plant. And the seed heads are gorgeous too. And you tend to like, most plants we appreciate most of the time based on their foliage, because that's what we see the most of. The flowers are moment to moment, but we live year long with their foliage. So we have to really get an understanding of how to mix and mingle those foliages together. So when I'm looking at this pattern, I'm not thinking about flower color, I'm thinking about coarse, how do I play off the coarse texture of the foliage with the Parthenium and Echinacea, and where does a Monarda fit in, and how can I drift that through these plants? Because the other thing I got good vertical. I got good vertical with the Echinacea, and I got good vertical, not quite as good with the Cacalia. But so the Parthenium is loose vertical, Cacalia is loose verticals, and the Monarda, I can drift through that. We'll see how that works, and not get shaded out. So I'm going to start with Monarda here on the edge. At least I perceive that to be the edge. If I put more patterns together, that could be 5 feet off the original edge or path. All right, so I put Monarda, and I can bunch them together because they collide into each other. Their rhizomes will spread, they'll collide into each other, and they'll do that happily. They'll do it happily and healthy because they still have such an ability to collect light. And I'm going to put the Cacalia here. So it's going to lean this way, it's going to lean this way, it's going to lean this way, but still be more vertical than it is than it is wide. So I have that here. And I'll put Monarda here. And I think I'm going to do 2 Cacalias. This way, this way. That's how they spread. So I got a big group of Cacalia here. Monarda, Monarda. I've got drifting through the center. Then I do Parthenium and Monarda here. Parthenium, Parthenium, Monarda, Monarda, Parthenium, and Monarda. So I've got the Monarda slightly drifting through. I might take one out. I think I'm going to take this one out. I want these 2, I want to put a Parthenium here. I want the 2 white flowers. As you can see, they're flat, but they're distinctly different. The Parthenium is a tighter white. The Cacalia is a looser white. And they both bloom at about the same time, but as the Cacalia is turning brown, dark brown, the Parthenium will still be in bloom and be white. So I have them, I want the 2 white flowers to kind of play off each other as white, but yet different textural looks of white. And with the Monarda just sprinkling up between them. So this Monarda right here could be in trouble in the future. But because it spreads by rhizomes, it'll still be able to peak up as the Parthenium and the Cacalia lean on it a little bit. Again, it's spreading by rhizomes, and it'll be able to peek up on the other side of the foliage of the Parthenium and the Cacalia, which is pretty cool. I discovered that at a children's playground. What did I discover? Somebody took a piece of flagstone and threw it on top of a Veronica Veronica tucrium, I think that was it. And the flagstone sat right there, and the Veronica grew out from underneath the rock and came up. I thought, boy, is that cool. So you can actually step on the stone and walk through the garden or walk through their playground, and the Veronica had its rhizomes come up and grow on each side of the flagstone. So I thought that was a good discovery. So we can find ways to access gardens, access even playgrounds for children, and have plants still be part of that situation because they find a way rhizomatously to come through on each side of the piece of flagstone. And that's, again, the energy of the plant, the crown of the plant, based on its rhizomatous habit, but tight rhizomes, and also the ability to collect light. So again, this Monarda here could be threatened, but still will live this way and this way as the foliage from this plant leads on that plant. Okay, let's go to another grid. This one I'll make 4 by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 by 5. And we're going to use Parthenium and Echinacea. Echinacea purpose. So we have Parthenium and Echinacea. So it's Echinacea purpurea and Parthenium integrifolia. Now you can see on the 2 images there, that's one of the combinations used. And that's a combination put together at Lurie Garden that Pete Outhoff did. It's a beautiful combination. And you can see the Parthenium in bloom in that image in July. The Parthenium starts blooming in late June, blooming with the Echinacea in July, August, and look at in September, the Parthenium still in bloom, and the Echinacea purpurea, beautiful seed heads. So that's a wonderful combination, again, Pete came up with and used wonderfully well, drifting through the garden on one of the corners at Lurie Garden. So let's take a look at how we do this. We'll take an Echinacea, 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 Parthenium. I'll put one out here, Parthenium. I'll put one on the edge. Echinacea, 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 and heavy, and Echinacea. Now, when I look at the Echinaceas, they grow they're an upright growth habit, very vertical, than they are wide. So you can bring them closer to the edge here, And that way they have about 6 to 8 inches before they hit the edge. And again, this edge might be another garden pattern. You're uncertain at this time, and you can move the plants when you lay the plants out. You got about 6 to 8 inches to this edge before they would run into that part of the garden. And then we just drift the Parthenium through, and the Parthenium is upright. Has, again, large leaves, similar leaves to Echinacea, for collecting sunlight before they flower in late June. So, and I think I put another Echinacea here too. I want to fill this up. You have Echinacea and Parthenium drifting through it. And it's a beautiful pattern that Pete created. And I'm sure he uses it in other gardens because it's really an outgoing feature of the garden, all the way from late June all the way into late September. Very textural. Okay, our next grid is going to be Nepeta subsessilis. Make this a 6 by 5. So we have Nepeta subsessilis. I really like this plant. I didn't start growing it until 2002, and I wasn't quite sure how it did. It did well at Northwind. I have to move our notebook a little bit. I grew it at Northwind, and I never really took it off site until 2029. I put it at the Shed Aquarium in the migratory bird habitat area at the Shed Aquarium, and it did tremendously well in average to dry soil with limited irrigation. And we did plant it through dead sod, so it had a good organic matter content, but the organic matter that was brought back into the shed was only about 12 to 15 inches deep. And after that, it was compacted yet broken up construction site on top of that. But the Nepeta did very well and was very stable. It's still there from 2008. So I use it much more because it has such a good architectural look. It flowers nicely in spring, but it's a great architectural look. So it's Nepeta subsessilis, and I'm going to plant it with, how about just Cacalia? Cacalia, it's Cacalia plantaginea. Now the genus has changed for Cacalia. I can't remember, it begins with an A. So I know the genus on Cacalias have changed. So I still call Cacalia plantaginea. And I love growing these from seed because the plant told me what it was going to do. I tried the seed year after year. I could not get them to germinate. Okay, I did 6 to 8 weeks of moist cold treatment, and then I sowed the seed in late October. Excuse me. So I sowed about 2 flats in late October. It came up everywhere. Simply, the plant needed a longer moist cold treatment. It needed 9 to 12 weeks of cold weather instead of 6 to 8. And those few weeks made a world of difference. And Cacalia plantaginea, I started using that maybe 6 years ago. And I wasn't really sure where it fit in, but it fits in almost everywhere I plant now because of the beautiful flowers and the coarse foliage. And that was self-discovery for me. I didn't know how to get used to coarse-looking foliage. It took a while, but the Cacalia is just a wonderful plant, and I would say just look it up and see how it can fit into your style of planting. And when you discover the groups of plants you can place it with so it can be successful. And so the Nepeta, you can see in the picture how mounding it gets. It's almost as wide as it is tall. So I'll start with Nepeta on the edge. Put the Cacalia here. And I'm going to do 2 Cacalias right here. Nepeta. 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 And now I think I want a Cacalia here. Again, because it is upright more than mounting, so it's not going to flop over. It'll lean, but it won't collapse on itself. And I'll Nepeta here, Nepeta here, Nepeta here. Cacalia, Nepeta, and Nepeta. So I've got the dominant look is the Nepeta, and you know what? I think I want more Cacalia. I love that white, and because it does hold itself up, I'm going to put Cacalia here with the Nepeta going in between. I think I really like the Nepeta with the blue and that mounding look flowing through the Cacalia, because the white flower is such a beautiful look. Seed heads are beautiful, very textural, dark, medium brown, and then the foliage is husky, so it's got a really husky look to it. Holds up well. So that'll flow through here, and then the Nepeta subsessilis will kind of go through here and here. I think that'll look good, and if I look into the future, I don't see much to do here, because it'll shade out the ground by mid to late June. The coarse foliage will have shaded the ground out, so I won't have much hoeing or weeding because I won't be able to get in there with the Dutch push-pull. It's going to be very thick, but it is a good opportunity for maybe 2 to 3 layers of spring bulbs. And through this, you can also use alliums that can come through there in May before each one of these flowers. So I would see what kind of interesting bulb layers you can come up with from mid-April to mid-June. So that's, you can set this one aside. I think we're doing pretty good. Let me tear this one off. We'll look at one more. Let's look at Nepeta and Monarda. Nah. Yeah, maybe. Let's try. We'll do 5 by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nepeta. Yeah, we'll do Nepeta and Monarda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As we used Nepeta with Parthenium and Cacalia earlier, so I got Monarda, and Nepeta subsessilis. So I think I'll start the Nepeta here. Put 2 together, a larger group. I'm going to put 2 over here. And for now, 1 over here. 2 on this side. And then the Monarda, again, I can put them close, because I can put them close together, because again, they're just going to grow into each other. Not one inhibiting the other, and then have that ability to collect light so both crowns can stay strong. Again, I could put them pot to pot. They'll be fine, because they would collect light, the crowns would combine rhizomatously as the plant ages, you'd have one big plant. And there I go. So it's really simple. This was actually pretty quick. I got the Monarda coming through the center. I got 2 groups of Nepeta subsessilis, so you have the large mounding with the Nepeta going through the center. We talked about collapsibility before. Here's collapsibility, where the Nepeta subsessilis would collapse leaning into the Monarda, and as we mentioned in the other one, the Monarda, because it's rhizomatous, will be able to grow out from underneath that heavily shaded area. If it reduces the light penetration, the Monarda can go outside of that, collect light, and stay healthy. And that's in these 2 areas here. We have both of these Nepeta as they age, and that's about the 4th or 5th year. So through the first 3 years, as they mature, going from youth to maturity, that's not going to be a situation. And by the 4th year, that Monarda is going to be actually a very mature, strong plant too. So it can accept the foliage of both Nepetas, shading them out. And those are some of the dynamics. Isn't just seeding and having seeds fill in the holes of other plants or opportunistic plants that reseed. Dynamics is also how the plants crowd and grow into each other, and we have to always be aware of that happens in a healthy way based on the youth to maturity, growth rate, and growth habit. Okay, let's go on to our last one. You'll see that with the Astilbe, I was looking for it on the computer. I couldn't remember what it was. So the last one is Astilbe purpurcurs and Nepeta subsessilis and Levisticum. Let me get this a little bigger. Levisticum scoticum, which is, I can't think of the common name for that either. Well, that's okay. So I have Levisticum, and we have Astilbe, purpurcurs. We have to put down Chinensis purpurcurs. The Chinensis have a more forgiving nature to soil moisture. They still don't do well in dry soil, but they don't curl up right away and their leaves turn brown in the slightest dry moment. So the Chinensis are much more forgiving as far as soil moisture. Purpurcurs is very nice. It's taller and has a beautiful kind of purplish pink flower. And then we have Allium Summer Beauty. We'll put that as a square. And I have Helenium Burning Heart. No, Heliopsis Burning Heart. Heliopsis Burning Heart. You can see that's that yellow. Burning Heart has that tinted red foliage. It's not as strong growing as Heliopsis helianthioides, a species, I think because the foliage lacks chlorophyll. But it has a nice loose look, and in rich soil, if you've got organic matter content of 5 to 6%, it gets quite big. But actually it'll lean nicely when it's placed with these plants it can lean into. And because it is a weaker growing plant as far as number of stems because of lack of chlorophyll, it doesn't have a dense grouping of stems. It has a limited grouping of stems, being a slightly weaker plant, and they'll lay nicely onto the top or within something. So it makes a good combination. And what else? Okay. So we have a backdrop. We'll put that in here. What's in that? We'll say that's on there. The backdrop in the photo is Amsonia tabernaemontana. You can see a large grouping of it on the top of the picture. So we'll redefine what we've got here. The Astilbe is actually farther in and to the left of the Amsonia. So I'm going to take the Levisticum and have that here and here. I'm breaking up the group, putting a Levisticum there. I'll have the Astilbe purpurcurs there. I'll put it, I think I'll put another one right here, there. And on the other side of that, I'm going to put two Helenium. And they can lean into the purpurcurs or they can lean into the Amsonia. Now I'm taking a chance, for me personally, because with the orange flower of the Helenium, orangish, goldish orange, and having the red within the flower, I'm taking a chance on my colors with the Astilbe purpurcurs. But I kind of think it'll work, because I'm always concerned about oranges, reds, yellows. I don't really know how to use the colors that well in the garden. Like I said, most of my attention is on foliage and the mingling of foliage together, because I really like the way the foliage on the Heliopsis with the dark foliage will lean nicely in either direction. And I like that maroon red foliage leaning into the Amsonia with that medium green dense foliage. So I'll have to, and maybe other people can judge for me how they feel about the colors when they flower. And then I've got Levisticum, and I'm going to put Summer Beauty here. I'm going to run that right through the middle. So the rest of the planting will be Summer Beauty. And again, I could tighten that up because if Summer Beauty has narrow leaves like a grass, tight crown, and again, I can plant them pot to pot. And they would just collide with each other, one stopping the other. The rhizomes, a tight crown would intermingle finally, and you'd have one big plant. Putting two pot to pot is not going to cause either one of those plants to be unhealthy. But so I'll probably put them on 12-inch centers, and that'll be this river going through here, this way and that way. And I might, no, I think I'll leave like that. I like the two levisticum up here. And if I change anything, it could be in the next 3 to 5 years as I assess it. It might be I need to put one more levisticum in. I even might need to take out the Heliopsis because it really just doesn't work right with that orange flower with a little bit of red in it with the Astilbe purpuricurs. But that would be something I would do in 2 or 3 years. And again, do I call that? That's gardening. You know, it's what you do. You move things around. You deal with the dynamics of the relationships, and you're also involving yourself aesthetically with the planting, because that hurts people's feelings if they see those colors and they just can't handle it. So instead of ripping the whole garden out, you just change the tones of color, and everyone can, oh, thank you, Roy, for not constantly hurting my emotions as I walk by. And that's what happens with gardens. They're very emotional. People react to them. And we have to bring ourselves included into changing of styles slowly and thoughtfully. So, hey, thanks again. That was our third show. And we'll be involved with more patterns. I think I'd like to get into some of the patterns. And maybe next time we get together, I'd like to design, and this will affect people, a native prairie garden, and see what components I start with, and then what we can constantly add to that as the native prairie garden evolves. Thank you, everybody. I'm losing my voice. Good to see you guys.